All right, for those of you that have been out in West Virginia history, I want to do a video on the Bill of Rights. That's what we've been working on this week, and that's what we'll be quizzed on and tested on because it's very important. So I want you to pay close attention, take some notes. I want to see your notes when you return, and so just make yourself a heading, the Bill of Rights. That's the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. They were added to the Constitution in 1791 after the Constitution had been ratified in 1789. And the First Amendment is quite long, and I don't expect anybody to write all that down, but that is what it says literally. What I want you to remember is this. There are 6 freedoms that are given to us in Amendment number 1, and each one is vital and important, so you must remember it. We have freedom of religion and from religion, freedom of assembly, press, petition, and speech. And if you can remember it with this acronym, RRAPPS, that will help you to remember everything that's in just Amendment number 1. This isn't all the 10 amendments, this is just Amendment number 1. So, freedom of religion, what does that mean? That means that you are protected in any religion that you want to participate in. You have free exercise. Matter of fact, it's called the Free Exercise Clause to the Bill of Rights. Now, I know right now you don't have freedom of religion because your parents would kill you if you decided you wanted to be something other than what they're trying to teach you. But eventually, in our country, you do have freedom of religion, and you'll have to make this decision for yourself, whether or not you want to follow Christianity and follow Christ, or whether or not you don't. And even Christ gave us free will to make those decisions. And so our country is based on Christian beliefs and principles. Our foundations are all established on Christian beliefs and principles. There are people today that would like to deny that, but you simply can't deny it when you look back. Most of our founders had some type of Christian heritage or relationship. And so, anyway, that's another story. But freedom of religion, you have the freedom to worship as you please. However, you can't break the law. So that means if your religion were to involve animal sacrifices or something like that's breaking the law, so you can't do that. But basically, you have freedom of religion. You have freedom from religion. This is called the Establishment Clause. So you've got the Free Exercise Clause in freedom of religion, and you've got the Establishment Clause in freedom from religion. And that simply means that our government cannot decide that they are going to establish a certain religion, and we all have to be that. For instance, they can't put into practice that everybody has to be Hindu, or everybody has to be Muslim, or everybody has to be atheist, or certainly everybody has to be Christian. They're definitely not going to do that. But they cannot establish a religion. And this was very important to our founding fathers because, of course, they had lived for a time under a king who wanted to make it mandatory that, for the most part, make it mandatory that people would become Catholic. Then you have freedom of assembly. As long as it's peaceful, there is a condition. You cannot assemble plotting and planning a riot or an overthrow of the government or what have you, but you can peacefully assemble. And of course, this is what enables us to freely gather in our churches, or at least it's part of it. The freedom of religion is part of that as well, but we have the freedom to assemble. We have the freedom to petition. That means you can complain to the government for redress of grievances, and they're not going to haul you off in the dead of night. You have freedom to petition and complain about things. If you don't want to wear a mask in our COVID era, you can complain about it. Now, the government is still stepping in and, of course, making certain things mandatory, and that's another issue that may end up in the courts for the courts to decide. But we'll look at stuff like that more later on. But freedom to petition the government. You can complain and they won't arrest you for complaining about it. Some countries they would. You have freedom of the press. The press can print. They can say in the media, CNN, Fox News, ABC, NBC, any of them, the Bluefield Daily Telegraph, the New York Times, the Washington Post, any of the news outlets, Facebook, any of the media outlets, they are free to say what they want. They can make it up. They can lie like a dog. They can do whatever they want to do. They can say what they want. Just because you see it on the internet, just because you hear it on TV, does not make it true. However, it's up to the individual. If someone says something that isn't true and another person wants to sue them over that, they can sue them for slander or libel. If it's spoken words, it's slander. If it's libel, it's written defamation. And we'll get into more all of that later on. But you do have freedom of the press, and that is to protect us from a government that would start to censor information. Of course, we're living in a day and age when some of the press is censoring the news and not telling the entire story or the whole story. So that's a real problem. But it's designed to protect us from government censorship. And then you have freedom of speech. You can say what you want. And these are rights that are called inalienable rights, which means they've been given to mankind, man and womankind, by God. And so man cannot take them away from you. And our founding fathers did recognize that. These are inalienable rights given to us by our Creator God, and they cannot be taken away by man. Now, some countries and some governments of other countries, they may try to take them away. But in America, we are a democracy and a republic. We have freedom of speech, freedom of the press, petition, assembly, freedom of and from religion, and all of those are very important. All of those are vital. That's Amendment number 1. Okay, and I took longer in class going over each one of these, but basically said the same thing. So just make sure you know Amendment number 1, RRAPPS. The Second Amendment, most people know that. The Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Okay, we have the right to legally protect ourselves with guns. Now again, when this was written, you didn't have AK-47s and you didn't have sawed-off shotguns and you didn't have those kind of things. But you didn't have assault rifles. So there's been some changes to this over time. But for the most part, that's an issue for the courts to decide. But for the most part, we have the right in America to protect ourselves with guns, with weapons. Now, there's a lot of people that want to interpret this to mean or to say that because of the way it's worded, that only the first part, a well-regulated militia, has the right to keep and bear arms. Well, a militia would be like our National Guard. So there are some people that want to interpret it to say that only the National Guard has the right to keep and bear arms. But that's not the way we interpret that. Okay, so we're just going to scoot right along. The Third Amendment is probably not one that you even think about much anymore, but it was very important to the founders that developed the Bill of Rights because they had lived this. During the American Revolution, the redcoats, the British soldiers, were forced they forced their way into the colonial people's homes, and they lived with them. And the colonial people were required to probably give up their beds and their food and whatever they had to take care of these soldiers. Now, the fellas that wrote this Third Amendment, they had lived that, so they felt very strongly about this. This isn't something that I don't think we would worry about today, but we do have an amendment to the Constitution that says no soldier during times of peace shall be allowed to quarter or to stay in someone's home during times of peace. Now, of course, that doesn't apply if there's a war going on, which if there's a war going on, I want all of the soldiers living at my house taken care of, just me. But no. So anyway, today they wouldn't do that anyway. Today they would want to probably come and stay at the church where they could all stay together, like in the gym or what have you. Or they would all confiscate and take over the motels and they would all stay there. They wouldn't want to divide up and stay in our homes anyway. But this is still there, and it's still important to remember, and it is a protection for us. And again, I think they would be staying, like I said, in motels. The Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment has several things in it, but the main thing I want you to remember is that it is a protection against anyone who is accused of a crime. It protects us from illegal searches and seizures. This is the part that you want to remember. Illegal searches and seizures, which means that the police or the militia or the army or what have you cannot come to our homes, cannot search and take us, our family members, our stuff, your computer, your iPhone, your iPad, your cell phone, whatever. They cannot take that away from you unless a judge has given them a search warrant. They have to have a warrant, a search warrant that would be authorized by a judge that would say specifically what they're looking for and where they're going to look for it. And so, this protects us from illegal searches and seizures from the government. So it's a pretty important amendment. Now, amendment number 5 has a whole bunch of stuff in it, but I'm going to summarize it into 5 things. There's 5 things in amendment number 5 that I want you to remember. And you probably already know 2 of them because you've heard the expression, I'm going to plead the 5th. See if I can get to it. When it says I'm going to plead the 5th, it means that you're not going to testify against yourself. This just shows all the 5 things I want you to know. This stands for due process. This stands for being tried twice for the same crime. That's illegal. Can't do that. This stands for, I'm not going to tell on myself. This stands for the fact that in the 5th Amendment, we have the right to a grand jury. And this stands for the government can take our homes. I know that sounds scary, doesn't it? They can take our homes, but they have to pay us what they're worth. If your home is worth $100,000, the government cannot come and take it and give you $5 for it. They have to give you what it's worth, what it would sell for. But anyway, we'll come to all these independent. Well, I thought I would. Okay, well, let's talk about each one of those then separately. This one is called due process. That simply means that there is a specific way in which a person who's accused of a crime has to be treated. They cannot be illegally searched and seized without a search warrant. That's part of due process. They cannot be thrown into jail and they don't even tell them why they've thrown them into jail. They have to be told what they're accused of. They have to be read their rights. They have to know now that they have the right to remain silent, that anything they can, anything they say can and will be used against them in a court of law. So they have to know specifically what it is that the police and the lawyers and the judges, they have to follow a certain process, and that's called due process. And if any of that's messed up, a person as guilty as sin, as guilty as obviously guilty, will probably be allowed to get free because due process has not been followed. So that's the way it is in our country. That's not the way it is in all countries, but that's the way it is in our country. Double jeopardy. Now there was a movie, Double Jeopardy, where a girl was accused of killing her husband, and she served time for that. She served several years in prison for that, so she paid the price for it, but she really didn't kill him. He had tricked her. And of course, they didn't find a body, so he was really still alive. So she led him to believe that she could still kill him because she'd already paid the price for it. But that doesn't really work that way. But what this does mean is that if you're tried for a crime and you're found innocent, they can't try you again for that same crime. Because if you stop and think about it, then what they could do is they could take a person accused of a crime and they could just keep on and keep on and keep on trying them until eventually some jury out there did find them guilty. So if you've been accused of a crime and you've been tried for a crime and you're found innocent, then they can't try you again for that. Okay, like I said, this one, you do not have to testify. If you're accused of a crime, you are not required to testify for yourself or against yourself. You don't have to tell. If for say, you were accused of stealing my car. I always use that. I don't know why, but it just kind of seems like something teenagers would do. If you were accused of stealing my Jeep, and then you really didn't steal my Jeep, but you were doing something else that you didn't want Mom and Dad to know about, so you didn't want to tell where you really were, you don't have to. I mean, you don't have to do that. You don't have to tell. You don't have to come up with an excuse. If you're accused of a crime, it's the responsibility of the government, the prosecuting attorneys, to prove that you did that you did the crime. So you don't have to tell on yourself. That's pleading the fifth. Then when it comes to eminent domain is what this one is referred to. Let me go back, because you do need to write that down. Eminent domain is, where is it on here? Oh, shoot, I'm not seeing it. Without due process of law. It's on here somewhere. I'm sure it is. No person shall be held to answer unless the grand jury. Okay, I'm gonna write it on the board. Okay, eminent domain. Okay, and all that means is, I don't know if it's backwards, it looks backwards to me, but eminent domain, and there may be two M's there, but I don't think there are. Eminent domain just simply means that the government can take your property, but they have to justly compensate you for it. Okay, moving along. And the other one, the grand jury. I really would like to explain that a little bit better. But I didn't explain it fully in class. We kind of ran out of time. So the main thing that you need to know about the grand jury, there's two juries. If you're accused of a crime, there's basically two juries that are going to be involved in finding you innocent or guilty. And the first one is known as the grand jury. And it's called the grand jury because it's large. Lots of times there's 20 people or more in a grand jury. And that just simply means that these are the people that consider the evidence against you. And then they would be the ones that they choose to indict you or not to indict. This is getting too deep, I'm afraid, for 8th grade especially. This is more when we study government in the 12th grade. But a grand jury may indict a person, and you can't see that, Tony. Okay, to indict a person means to formally charge a person with a crime. And so the grand jury's job is to indict or not to indict. It's called a true bill of indictment or a no true bill of indictment. But again, we'll get into that more in the 12th grade. So the grand jury, you are guaranteed a grand jury as a result of Amendment number 5. And if you are indicted at a grand jury, then it goes on to what's called the petit jury. And the petit jury is what happens when you watch your TV shows and you see the Law and Order and all the different shows like that, where there's actually 12 people that are listening to the trial, they're observing the witnesses, they're listening to the lawyers, the attorneys, and what they have to say. They're observing the accused, and all of that. And then they are the ones, the petit jury is the one that decides whether someone is actually guilty or innocent. Okay, now I'm going to go on. This video is going to have 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 on it. And so, but this actually covered several days in school. So this is one video, but it will cover it, for the most part, everything. Everything for the Bill of Rights, rather. Amendment number 6 is similar to Amendment number 5. Amendment number 5 and 6 deal with the rights of the accused, people that are accused of crimes. So in Amendment number 6, you have the right to a trial by jury. Okay, so a trial by jury is what you write down. And in that just simply means, this is referring to that petit jury that I was talking about. In Amendment number 5, you have the right to a grand jury that passes down an indictment. And then in Amendment number 6, you have the right to an actual trial by a jury of your peers, okay? And you want, a lot of people, I mean, I always emphasize this because I think it's very important. Serving on a jury is not something that you should try to get out of doing. This is very important. This is the way our system works. You want on a jury, you want somebody who has a college education, and you want somebody who doesn't. You want somebody who maybe is a clerk in a store like Walmart or Rose's or Belk or wherever. You want somebody maybe like that. Maybe you want a teacher. Maybe you want somebody who is a homemaker, who stays at home and she takes care of her children all the time, or a man that does that. And you want a variety of different people with a variety of different levels of education, experiences, and hopefully the idea is if you put all those people together with all that different levels of understanding and education, then they'll come up with a fair solution. Because think about it, if you were accused of a crime, wouldn't you want your jury to be balanced? You don't want everybody to be all, of one particular class or what have you. You want it mixed in. You want people to be able to look at all of the evidence and bring fresh ideas to it. I've sat on the jury several times, and I've listened to all kinds of different people that helped me to see what was happening in a variety of different ways. And hopefully I did the same for them. That way you can hopefully come to a fair decision. Okay, so again, you have the right to a trial with a judge and an attorney. But now this one is representing the fact that you have the right to a speedy and public trial. Okay, you have the right to jury members, is what I've got up here. And then you have the right to a speedy and public trial. That means they can't accuse you of a crime, arrest you. You've been even indicted, maybe by a grand jury. They arrest you, they put you in jail. And then about 5 years later, they say, oh yeah, well, it's time for your trial. It has to be reasonably speedy. Now, it'll all depend on, what the calendar is in the court. If the docket, as they call it, if the calendar is full, speedy may be 6 months down the road. Speedy might even be a year down the road. But for the most part, you're supposed to have a speedy and public trial. They can't arrest you, drag you into a basement somewhere where nobody can see what's going on, and illegally bring in false witnesses, and before you know it, you're sent up the river, you're sent to the big house, you're sent to jail, and you really didn't have a fair trial. It has to be speedy, it has to be public. All trials are public, except for juveniles, except for people your age. Trials are very public. Anybody can walk in off the street and go up there and sit and watch a trial. Now, of course, there are rules. You got to be quiet, and you got to listen, and you can't disrupt and what have you, but they're open to the public. Matter of fact, I usually take the 12th grade to watch a trial. And then also, you are, what do I want that one to represent? Hang on a minute. I think that's representing, yeah, I know what it is. That's simply representing a jury of your peers. This one, a fair people, a mixture of different people. The deck isn't stacked against you. They're not all of one class. They're not all of one race. They're all mixed up. Okay, you have the right to an attorney. Oh, I know what I meant for this one to be. It goes along with this one. You have the right to bring in, you have the right to witnesses. That's what it is. You have the right to witnesses. Whoever is testifying against you, whoever said that they saw you steal my Jeep, you have the right to see who that is. They cannot be anonymous. So you have the right to witnesses, that you have the right to see the witnesses that are testifying against you. But you also, in Amendment number 6, you have the right to bring in people that will testify for you in your favor. If you have 6 or 7 friends that are going to come in and say, "Wow, so-and-so would never steal something. They would never steal Miss Huffman's Jeep. They just wouldn't do that." You have the right to bring in witnesses in your favor to testify for you. You have the right to see witnesses that would testify against you. You have the right to know who it is. It can't be anonymous. Okay, you have the right to an attorney. You have the right to legal counsel. Some people refuse that. But you have the right to an attorney, and this represents jurisdiction. That's a big word. And again, that's not, you need to know it to understand what we're talking about, but I'm not going to quiz you on what jurisdiction is. Not in the 8th grade. Now in the 12th grade, yes. But jurisdiction, what does jurisdiction mean? I like to explain it this way. In my classroom, this is my jurisdiction, okay? I have control in this room. Miss Shoemate, Miss Lauderman, Miss Bazaris, they can't come in while I'm in here and take over. Technically, this is my turf. This is my room. This is my classroom. I'm in charge, okay? Now, Mr. Patton can. Mr. Patton, as our principal, Miss Matherly can. Miss Matherly can come in. She can override me. She can say, "Miss Huffman, go sit down. I've got to talk to him." And she has jurisdiction because Mr. Patton, Miss Matherly has jurisdiction over the entire school, the elementary and the high school, okay? I don't have jurisdiction in Miss Shoemate's classroom. I don't have jurisdiction in Miss Bazaris' classroom. They have jurisdiction. This is the area in which you have authority over. For instance, the West Virginia State Police, their jurisdiction is West Virginia. Their jurisdiction is not down in Virginia, okay? Now, just to kind of further explain, all the teachers have jurisdiction in the hallway. I can step out in the hallway. Miss Shoemate can step out in the hallway. Miss Shrewsbury can step out in the hallway. And if you're running or doing something you're not supposed to, we all have jurisdiction over that. So jurisdiction is the area over which you have authority, over which you have control. Okay, so in Amendment number 6, and you can't say that anymore. Okay. This represents that when a crime is committed, you're supposed to be tried in the jurisdiction where the crime took place. So in other words, if the crime took place in Mercer County, they can't haul you off to Washington, D.C. and have a trial there. Now, the reason for that, again, there's reasons for all of this that our founding fathers felt were very important. In colonial days, the colonial people could be accused of a crime in the colonies and hauled off to England to be tried, where, of course, they're going to be tried by a group of people that don't care about them. And so it wasn't a fair trial. And so this was an important concept to the people that made the Bill of Rights, to the people that made Amendment 6, because this was something they had experienced, okay? So all of these are very important to us today. We still have these. We don't go messing with our Constitution and throwing things out just willy-nilly. We can't do that. We have to maintain the structure that we've been given. If you make a change to an amendment, if you make a change to the Constitution, it's a long drawn-out process. You have to amend it. Matter of fact, for those of you at home that haven't been here this week, I kind of started that off with explaining what an amendment is. And an amendment is a change or an addition to the Constitution. So you do need to know that definition. An amendment is a change or an addition to the Constitution. Our Constitution allowed for slavery. I mean, it had portions in it. It still has portions in it that discuss slavery. When the Civil War happened and slavery was ended, they couldn't just say, okay, well, let's get out that old Constitution document and we'll get some white out, which they didn't have, and let's just white out that section on slavery. No, no, no. They had to add Amendment 13, which said slavery is illegal and unconstitutional in America. They had to amend the already existing document of the Constitution. Okay, hopefully that made a little sense to you. So, again, the things that are in Amendment 6, you have the right to a jury of your peers. You have the right to have the trial take place within the jurisdiction where you were accused, where it happened. You have the right to bring in witnesses, or you have the right to see witnesses that are charging you, that are accusing you of the crime. They cannot be anonymous. You have the right to see the witnesses against you. You have, it has to be a speedy and public trial. You have to have within a certain amount of time, and it has to be public. It has to be open to the general public. You have the right to bring in witnesses that will say good things about you, that will say that you didn't do it or you wouldn't have done it because you're a nice person, if you can find such a thing. I'm just kidding. You have the right to an attorney that will be your counselor, that will be your advisor. And of course, some of these things have changed over time. Today, it's if you can't afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you. They have public defenders that will plead your case for you. So anyway, that's Amendment number 6. Now, 5 and 6 are the biggest ones. Okay, so we're finished with that. The rest of the amendments are fairly short and sweet. So we'll get through those pretty quickly. Amendment number 7 still deals with court cases. You know, if you break the law, if you commit a crime, that's what 5 and 6 deal with. The accused, you're accused of a crime. Those are the protections that you're given in Amendment 5 and 6. But if there's something that goes on between two individuals, or even an individual and a company, or a school and an individual, you have the ability to take that person to court. And quite frankly, in our country today, we do that way too often. It's too easy to sue somebody else, in my opinion, but they don't ask me. But Amendment number 7 deals with lawsuits between individuals. When one individual sues another person. For instance, if, okay, this is 8th grade, so let's assume, who can I pick on? Those of you that are at home, let's assume Ocean Wyrick takes Isabella Deal's sweater, and maybe even Isabella gave it to her and said, here, you can wear it today because you're cold and I don't need it, so you can have it. Okay, so she takes her sweater, and let's say that sweater was kind of expensive. She paid $50 for that sweater. Okay, well, let's say Ocean decides she wants to keep it. So she tells Isabella, hey, I lost your sweater. It just disappeared. I don't know what in the world happened to it. It's gone. Well, Isabella, if they can't work that out between the two of them, Isabella could sue Ocean and her family. Which would be very foolish to do because you're going to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars to get something back that was only $50. But you can do it. Our founding father said if it was $20 or more, Of course, again, this was back in, the 1800s, the 1700s, that you can sue somebody for that. So that's why I put Judge Judy up here, because a lot of you would be familiar with her, and a lot of people that are going to sue one another, sometimes they will take it through a medium like this, and this gets it out of the courtroom, and this gets it off the calendar, the court docket, and you have to sign a waiver that you will go along with whatever Judge Judy agrees to or whatever she says, and then you cannot sue someone again. But basically, Amendment number 7 is civil lawsuits. It's lawsuits between individuals. And you have a plaintiff versus a defendant. Whenever you see a court case, whatever it says, this person is the person that is doing the suing. They are suing someone in court. This person is obviously defending themselves. So in our scenario, this would be Deal versus Wyrick. Okay, Isabella would be suing Ocean for her sweater. She wants her sweater back, or she wants $50. So anyway, that's Amendment number 7, and that's all you need to know about that. Amendment number 8, again, hopefully is not one we ever need to complain about, but it says excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted. This just means if you're caught shoplifting at Walmart and you stole a notebook and a pack of pencils, they cannot, when they want to haul you off to jail for that, which they're not going to, but don't try it, they can't set your bail at $1 million, because it doesn't equal what you did. If you're, they cannot put a fine on you of $100,000 for a pack of pencils. It has to equal. So they can't also do cruel and unusual punishment. They can't pull your fingernails out trying to get you to testify to what they've been accused of. So anyway, so this protects us against excessive bail and fines. It protects us against cruel and unusual punishment inflicted. A lot of people that are opposed to the death penalty will claim this one as a reason why they oppose it, because they'll say, what's more cruel and unusual punishment than executing someone? But that's for another story. Okay, now, Amendment number 9 and Amendment number 10 are very similar. Basically, our Founding Fathers said, if we forgot something, this is where we're throwing it in. Amendment number 9 says that just simply because a right is not numbered and listed in the Constitution doesn't mean you don't have it. So, for example, Amendment number 9, there's nowhere in the Constitution that says you have the right to move from Athens to Princeton. So they can't all of a sudden say you can't do that. This is where that's thrown in. You have the right to get married. You have the right, no, not at 13, but you have the right to come to Mercer Christian Academy. You have the right to go from school to school. You have a lot of rights are not specifically listed in the Constitution, but you still have them. So this is where this is mentioned. So it says that just because it's not mentioned doesn't mean you don't have it. And of course, some people abuse this, and they have carried this as far as to say that the Constitution implies, but it doesn't specifically state, that you have the right to privacy. So some people will take this one and they'll say, well, I have the right to privacy, and therefore if I want to get an abortion in private, I have the right to do that, which is kind of carrying it a step too far. And then Amendment number 10 is kind of the same deal, but it has to do with specific government powers. This is that government powers that have not specifically been given to the United States, the whole country, as one unit, nor has it been prohibited by each individual state, then those powers go specifically first to the states, then the people in the states. So that's just basically saying if there is a government power that has not been granted to the government in the Constitution, then first it should go to the states and then to the people of the states. And so really that's referring to certain things. Well, I mean, it's controversial. It can refer to certain things like Obamacare. Some people say, okay, nowhere in the Constitution does it say that the government has the right to force people to buy medical insurance. Well, when it went to the Supreme Court, because they did sue over that, when it went to the Supreme Court said, well, Obamacare is like a tax, and the government does have the right to tax us. So the Supreme Court found that Obamacare was okay to keep in place. But it's funny because when they started Obamacare, they said it wasn't a tax. So I guess it's a tax if they want it to be, and it's not a tax if they don't want it to be. But technically, this is what we have the courts for. If there's an issue between the federal government, especially, federal government is the government like in Washington, and if we have then the government of the states, and if they don't agree, this enables them to fight it out. And of course, the way they fight it out is through the courts. Okay, so that's the 10 amendments. First 10 amendments are called the Bill of Rights. You'll need to know that. So anyway, I hope this helps a little bit. I know this is long. If you have questions, feel free to message me, but you should take notes on this. When you guys that are home are coming back, we will have 2 quizzes. You'll have a quiz on 1 through 5, you'll have a quiz on 6 through 10, and then you'll have a test on the whole shooting match. The kids today are taking the quiz on 1 through 5. So you should write them down, study them. If you have a question, hit me with it when you come back. I'll give you some time.